In This Corner, the podcast of Buck 52, where you get boxing's biggest names, boxing's biggest stories, boxing's biggest fights, greatest memories, and moments. We dissect it all with pizzazz and aplomb. And Lee Groves, the boxing writer, author, historian, and CompuBox counter. And I tell you what, we don't have much time for small talk because we've got a lot to, I know I self-deprecated myself again there. That sounds dirty, self-deprecating, but I did that again. We got a lot to cover. So tell the audience what they're going to get before we get to it.
Well, as always, we have a jam-packed show. We're going to have a breakdown of the big fight of last weekend, which is Dmitry Bivol avenging his previous loss to Artur Beterbiev with his own victory. We're going to have sort of a segment in which we go over the pros and cons of the entire show. And we will also have a preview or a review of Junto Nakatani's third round knockout, a pound for pound superstar.
Guy high on your list that Lee says might upend the monster. So
very, very much so. We're also going to preview tonight's pay-per-view show headed by Gervonta Davis-Lamont Roach. And we'll also pay tribute to a guy that we both know, and that's Greg Haugen, who passed away from colon cancer a few days ago.
Paying tribute to a fallen warrior, and he certainly was a warrior, and we'll get into that. But I tell you what, forget the commercial break, baby. We're getting right into it, so I flip it to you. Let's go. Bivol Beterbiev 2.
All right, well, the main event of last weekend's Super Show in Saudi Arabia saw Dmitry Bivol, as we said, avenge his majority decision defeat last October to Artur Beterbiev with his own majority decision victory to become the new undisputed light heavyweight champion. And with this win, Bivol becomes the 11th man in the four-belt era to become an undisputed champion, but only the second to have beaten an undisputed champion to do so. The first, Jermaine Taylor, when he dethroned Bernard Hopkins way back in July 2005, almost 20 years ago. It's hard to believe.
Yeah.
Let's talk about our scorecards first. The official judges, two of them had Bivol ahead 116 to 112 and 115 to 113, while the third judge had it 114, 114. My card was 115, 113 for Bivol. I was surprised by the flow of the fight. Beterbiev, who usually starts slowly, he actually came out of the gates pretty fast. And I had the fight 3-3 after 6 rounds. But meanwhile, Bivol, who faded down the stretch last October, was the guy who finished stronger. I gave him 4 of the last 6 rounds, and that's how I came to my card. How did you score the fight, and why did you score it in the way you did?
Well, you always know my card's going to be a little different.
Yeah.
The way I score things. I'm sure I had in. I'm looking at it now. I actually did have one even round in there, round 5. After 6, I had it Bivol by 1 point. So I had it close like you did. I had him by a point. My final scorecard tallied Bivol 117, Beterbiev 112. And for those that are saying, "Oh my gosh, how wide of a scorecard?" Shut your mouth. Wasn't wide at all. The score that's 5 points, but those rounds were razor close, and I have better eyes than all of you at how to really dissect a fight and break it down. And all kidding aside, it was really difficult because there were a lot of really close rounds. But one thing I said on last week's show when we had Tommy Yankello and Regis Prograis and you, and we were having our panel show breaking it down when I picked Bivol to win, I stated that when you have a really great boxer, Bivol, and you have a really great slugger in Beterbiev, he's not just a slugger, but he would be defined as a puncher. Mm-hmm. Usually, if the puncher's going to win, he's going to win the first fight. And then from that point on, usually, Ali, Frazier, Leonard, Duran, others I could name, the boxer does better if we get to a second and a third fight. Why? Because boxers have more ways to adjust. They have a plan B and a C and a D and an E and an F and whatever. And Bivol didn't have to do that. He didn't have to go to D or E, but he did what I said he needed to do, a la what Canelo did in the second fight with Triple G. If your back even goes near those ropes, bam, get off to the side, left to right, spin out. And we saw that. And go back to the center of the ring. And the main thing I said he needed to do was throw more what? Jabs.
Yeah,
And I don't have the numbers.
I do.
You and I spoke about it the other day, but I think he listened to me on that. Um, Maybe he listened to. I don't think he would have had time to listen to our show before it aired, but he did exactly what I thought he would do. He's the much younger fighter, and Beterbiev's on the other side now. He's been actually on the other side. I thought Bivol won fight one, and he certainly won fight two. 117, 112. Dmitry Bivol. Jim? Oh, all of a sudden.
Well, you know what? You mentioned the numbers, and I actually have the numbers from this
Okay.
fight.
Tell me I'm
And,
right, baby.
and there were some things that I recommended last week that actually came through. I recommended that Bivol needed to pick up his work rate by 10 punches per round, and guess what? He did just that. In fight one, he averaged 35.3 punches per round, and in the rematch, he averaged 45.6. So that's 10.3 punches per round difference. I said that he needed to throw and land more jabs, and he did that too. He averaged 6 more attempted jabs per round and landed 2.3 more per round in the rematch. And while Bivol landed only 5 more total punches than Beterbiev in the first fight, he outlanded him by 49 this time. And here's something that surprised me. Despite losing the fight, Beterbiev performed well statistically when compared to the first fight. He actually threw 6 more total punches in the rematch than in fight one, and his defensive numbers were better. In the first fight, he allowed Bivol to land 50% of his power shots, but last weekend that number was down to 40%. His accuracy on offense was very close to what he did last time.
Right.
He dropped from 20% to
And
18%.
you had the first fight a draw, I think.
Had it a
Yeah.
draw. Yeah, I had it a draw. And Beterbiev went up from 29% accuracy to 30% in terms of power shots. So what this all says to me is that the result of this fight wasn't because Beterbiev was bad. It was because Bivol was very, very good. He really
He
was.
was better than Biev,
Yeah.
just a little bit. I agree with you. And from there, I guess we could quickly talk about. I don't need to see a third fight, and we'll
Okay.
probably see one. But the other guy, Beterbiev, is just going to continue to age. The other guy is going to continue to perhaps ripen a little bit. I don't think he suffered really bad damage in the second fight. He's going to get better. Again, I think we could see one. If we get one, fine. Bivol will win it more convincingly, in my opinion.
Mhm.
Beterbiev doesn't have the quickness to cut off the ring and beat him up and stop him. So we would see the same, except a more convincing result. So I don't need to see it. That's my opinion. I saw the two fights, two excellent fighters. The best fighter of the two is Bivol.
Okay, well, I differ a little bit. I think that a third fight is just the fair thing to do. Bivol
Sure.
suffered his first loss against Beterbiev, and he used that as motivation to lift his game in the rematch. And now that Beterbiev has taken his first loss, let's see if he can raise his game in the rubber match. It's very smart, and he's very well conditioned as well.
Well, and
The
you get another payday. See if that happens with all the work you do. Lee makes about I don't know 65,000 for everything he does. So of course that's just another payday for Lee Groves.
Well, why not? And also the
But you're
first fight
right.
the first fight was good, and I
Yeah,
think the second fight was even better. Why not have a third fight and see what happens there? But
and I
here's
think
my
I think that
caveat.
is conventional wisdom, and I think that's what we'll see.
Yeah, but here's my caveat. They waited 133 days before the first two fights. Let's have a similar spacing for the third fight. Let's strike while the iron is hot, get it done, and move on. And the winner fights David Benavidez after that. And let's have that fight happen sometime this year.
All right, perfect time to go to a little break, and we'll come back and talk about the rest of the card. We got to preview Tank, and we got to pay tribute to a fallen pugilistic warrior. We'll be back.
I got two options. Option one, I can accept defeat. Option two, I can get up. I can get tougher. I can get faster. I can get stronger. And then I go get mine. I made my choice. Have you made yours?
All right, back on In This Corner of the podcast, Buck 52 with Lee Groves. Lee, I know you wanted to mention something about where you have Bivol in the pound for pound rankings, given his performance Saturday in Saudi.
It's very interesting. After the first fight, people were wondering where Beterbiev ranked in the pound for pound rating now that he was an undisputed champion. Now that Bivol has done the same honor, and he did it against the guy who he lost to a few months ago, where do you put him in the pantheon? As for me, I have him third behind Alexander Usyk and Naoya Inoue. And I have him ahead of Crawford and Canelo, 4 and 5. Junto Nakatani, who we'll talk about later, I have him sixth. Jesse Bam Rodriguez is seventh. Beterbiev drops to number 8. David Benavidez is ninth, and Shakur Stevenson, who notched a victory, a TKO victory on this card last Saturday, I have him 10th. Tank, who we'll talk about later as well, he's right outside at number 11, and he's closing the gap. So I have him third. How about you?
Yeah, he's right in there. He's right in there, up there, around there. It's tough to put anybody ahead of Usyk right now.
Yeah.
The monster's mainly getting in there because of the way he takes people out. I don't know. You would actually know better than I on whether he's really had the great competition. Maybe he has. He's fought everybody that's out there. But until he fights, Nakatani would be his Beterbiev. He needs to fight somebody like that. Bivol has now done that twice. And again, I thought he won both. He certainly won the second one. So yeah. I would probably put Bivol ahead of the monster. And I think he does more in the ring with the exception of punching prowess. So, but as far as the rest of it goes, we'll wait to where I can sit down and really break everything down and get a look at Tank this weekend. So continue. Yeah. I know you want to talk about the undercard.
Well, actually, this segment is sort of like pros and cons of this particular show. What did we like about the show? What didn't we like about the show? And one of the things that I really liked about the last Saturday's card was the price. It was certainly priced right. $25.99 for 9 fights, 7 involving some sort of championship title. And a lot of those fights could be main events by themselves back in the good old days before Saudi Arabia came onto the scene. Meanwhile, in contrast, tonight's Amazon Prime show, topped by Gervonta Davis-Lamont Roach, which will have half the number of fights, is going to be $79.99. That's a huge difference in terms of quantity and quality. Now, I don't know how Turki Al-Sheikh, I don't know what the books indicate, how much money they're going to lose, but you can't question the value that Turki Al-Sheikh is offering here. What effect is this going to have on the industry at large? I got to ask you, will it cause other shows to lower their prices, responding to competition, or will it drive them out of business altogether if this keeps up?
Boy, what a great question. And I wish I had a great answer. My only thing would be what's great is the question, because we really haven't seen anything quite like this. We've had some promoters come in and get out. We had people that get a windfall of money and they usually blow it all on boxing and they get out. This guy, I don't think they're going to run out of money anytime soon over there in the desert. We're getting great fights. We're actually getting rematches and trilogies and all kind of good stuff. So I think that it's good for now. The pricing is great. Return on their investment, they're not getting that. They're not getting any damn return on their investment. You can just add up, I mean, even in the main event, they spent about 20 million, 25 million just on those two fighters, and then the rest of the card, millions and millions and millions of dollars, and then you price it at $25 on a Saturday afternoon when, at least in this country, nobody was watching it except us diehard boxing fans.
Right.
So it's difficult to see. It's almost like one of those things where we think, well, we better just be happy we have it for now and hope that it works out for everybody involved. But the most important thing to do is at least to, just like with this country right now, is at least to raise the question. And you put out a great question. I guess we'll just have to wait and see what the effects will be. Right now, it's positive. Will there be deleterious effects down the road? I don't know. I'm just glad we're getting some great fights right now.
Yeah, and adding to the problem is that if you want to watch all the boxing action that is out there this month, you not only have to pay the 25.99 for the Turkey card and this $80 for Gervonta Davis, you have the DAZN subscription that runs north of $30 a month. You have ESPN Plus. That subscription is there. The only really free boxing that you're going to get is on Pro Box, and it's on YouTube, and
Yeah.
every couple of weeks.
Well, they have our show to watch. We don't charge yet.
Well, that's
Although
true.
we are thinking about really sticking in a price of $74.55 for every segment of the show.
Oh,
I just don't know how to implement it. I don't know how to do those things. Maybe I'll get one of those boxing expert podcasters out there to help me figure out all of that. The ones that don't know a damn thing about boxing, but they sure know how to do internet crap. Anyway,
oh, wow.
continue.
All right. Well, another thing that I really liked was the pacing of this show.
Yeah.
One huge complaint regarding the past Saudi shows was the pacing. Before, there were long gaps between fights. There were interviews with celebrities. There were concerts. There were prize giveaways. There was a ton of pre-fight pageantry. A lot of talk by the talking heads between every fight. It really slowed things down.
Yeah.
But last weekend, there was none of that. And the show was universally praised for it on social media. I
Yeah.
mean, even without the bells and whistles, this was a 9-hour telecast, but it didn't feel
No,
like 9 hours.
that's a great point. And one of the things that, their master of ceremonies, which we call a ring announcer, that guy that we know, I think his name is Tom Triber,
Yeah.
did a splendiferous job. What a great job he did of handling everything. His timing, his tonality was unbelievable. Buffer came in there, I think, for the last two fights, I believe.
Yeah.
And you're right. The pacing was good. It was the pacing of the fight, and Bivol was excellent.
It really was. And a third positive takeaway that I took from the card was the organizers' ability to nail down opponents on very short notice. Two of those fights had to be changed due to sudden illness. There was a bug going around in Saudi Arabia. But within hours, Floyd Schofield, who was supposed to fight Shakur Stevenson, was replaced by Josh Padley, who was actually ranked one place higher than Schofield in the rankings. And then Daniel Dubois, who came down with a bug, he was a defending champion. He was replaced by Martin Piccoli, who was seen as the boogeyman of the division. And I know when the announcement first came out, there was a lot of excitement based on what he did against Jared Anderson. Well, we got what we got, but still, the fact that they could get a guy on several planes in the Congo, fly in, arrive at 2 o'clock in the morning, the morning of the fight, and then actually go into the ring and compete, that says a lot about Piccoli. It says a lot about Joseph Parker, who is now a defending champion instead of a guy chasing a title. He accepted the match, and everything seemed to be seamless as far as the replacement process is concerned.
Right, right. Yeah, they did a good job. For time purposes, I'll let you just keep rolling along. I know you want to quickly go over some of the fights on the card. So
Finally, most of the fights lived up to the billing. First of all, Callum Smith and Joshua Buatsi, I thought was the best action fight of the night. And Agit Kabayel, He raised his stock considerably after stopping Zheli Zhang, as did Virgil Ortiz in beating Israel Madrimov.
And you nailed those fights correctly.
Yeah, and Carlos Adames, I think he deserved a lot better than a draw against Hamza Shiraz. And Shakur Stevenson, not a lot was expected. He thought he was going to blitz Josh Padley, and yes, he stopped him in round 9. But Padley showed himself well, given the circumstances, and Shakur Stevenson got up to the bar that was expected of him. He dominated the fight and he knocked him out. All in all, I thought it was a pretty good overall show. What did you think?
Yeah, everything you said, I agree with. Basically, though, what it was, Lee, was everybody did what they were supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody did what they were supposed to do. I expected Bivol to fight better and win, and he did. Shakur, fighting a guy that is not even close to being on his level. He did what he was supposed to do. The one I want to talk about, though, is New Zealand's Joseph Parker. He's ready to face Dubois for the heavyweight championship. At least one version of it, right? I mean, Dubois holds, what belt does Dubois hold?
The IBF belt.
Right. And so Dubois gets sick, and they go get, as you call him, the boogeyman, and they get him in there. And I remember at first saying, wow, but then when reality set in my head that you got a guy that hadn't started training yet, probably was going to be, north of 300 pounds,
and
right?
He was.
And then, he was flying for 28 straight hours from the Congo, and then he has to arrive. And I told you that it's not going to work out for him, not arriving, whatever. And we saw what happened. And basically, to tell you what I thought about Parker's victory, let's throw it to this interview I did yesterday with my buddy Martin Devlin in New Zealand.
Heavyweight boxing, Joseph Parker beating Bivol in Saudi Arabia on the weekend. Did it impressively, but the big bugger about this is he's not going to get the fight against Usyk because Usyk wants Dubois. Our man for all things heavyweight boxing is James Smitty Smith from Vegas. G'day, mate.
How are you?
Well, disappointed, really, because of what happened on the weekend. And, the feeling here is that what really was going on with Dubois pulling out sick at that late stage?
Well, they lost a couple of fighters that were scheduled to be on that card. Schofield, who was supposed to fight Shakur Stevenson, came up ill, as did Dubois. I don't know if it's the Saudi Arabian flu or what's going on. But I got to tell you something. I look at it differently because what Parker has done the last few years, 6 fights in a row, and he's beaten, of course, Wilder, who was like a killer, considered a killer at one time, and Zhang, the big puncher, who obviously now's past his prime, and now Bivol, who even guys like me looked at this guy as a low-budget George Foreman type of guy with what he did when he upset Jared Anderson and knocked him out. He looked like the real killer of the division, and he should have never taken the fight on that short of notice. 315 pounds, 28-hour flight. But Parker is sitting in a beautiful position. He gets a win over another presumed killer of the division, and he's in a position to fight Dubois again. I'm sure they'll still make that fight, in my opinion. So I think for him, it couldn't have turned out better, to be honest with you, unless he had fought Dubois and knocked him out.
Okay, well, that's a great way of looking at it, actually. Puts a really good perspective on it.
Yeah, I mean, and again, he's only, 33 years of age. He only has, I think, 3 losses, stopped once by Joyce. One of the things that I'm really impressed with Parker is how smart he is. His guile inside the ring. He might be, one of the smartest, maybe not quite in Usykville, but his intelligence inside the squared circle. He doesn't do anything great, but he does everything very good, and he's got good power. And again, he's so smart and crafty in there. So I think he's sitting in a wonderful position, and he's capable I don't think he can beat Usyk, but he's capable of beating really anybody. He's proven that already. And I'm not saying he's resurrected his career because he didn't really go anywhere in the first place. But trust me, in the right now in the landscape of the heavyweight division, he is sitting about as pretty as anybody that's not named Usyk. So I tell you what, I think Joseph Parker is sitting pretty, man. With everybody other than a fella named Usyk. I mean, he probably still gets the fight with Dubois. I think. I don't know because I know Usyk said he wants to fight him again, but he already beat him. I know there was the controversy and what have you, but Joseph Parker's only 33 years of age, so he's sitting pretty, according to Smitty, I think, after what happened. And as for Bacoli, I know it's just, he rolled the dice and he lost, but it might be more than that. It could be more than that. The way he lost, and you never know in boxing. That's why sometimes maybe the roll of the dice would have been not to roll the dice, to just take, because he already had a fight against Ajagba, right? That was lined up.
Ajagba in
and
May.
I don't know if that's still going to happen. But anyway, we'll see how that plays itself out.
Now we turn to the cons of this card. And many pundits inaccurately billed this as the greatest fight card in boxing history. It was stacked. It was a turkey sandwich, but it wasn't the greatest in boxing history. Yet it received no buzz whatsoever in the United States. To those of us who were introduced to the sport in the 1970s and 1980s and have devoted our lives to this sport, this is very disappointing. Why do you think that is, the fact that it didn't get any buzz here? And while boxing is thriving worldwide, it is struggling here. What can be done to fix it, and can it even be fixed?
I think all that can be done now is just we get the fights that the fans want to see. Almost like going back to grassroots. You get the fights that people want to see. You surround those great fighters with good fighters and good fights, competitive fights. Something needs to be consistent, though. There has to be a level of consistency. And, it's a tough economy out there, and that has to be taken into consideration.
Yeah.
I really believe if some network took the shot and did boxing consistently, they could slowly but surely build it back. But, I'm just more at the age and at the point in my life where I'm just grateful that I was part of some of the great cards, whether it be a Chris Dundee Tuesday night thing with Gomeo Brennan and Louis Rodriguez and Florentino Fernandez and Jimmy Williams and something like that, or whether it was the Don King cards that I broke into the thing, Revenge the rematches, when I did when I did work with Don King, when we'd have to be there as broadcasters at noon, because the first fight would be 12:30 or 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and then it would play up until, and they were world champions fighting at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, or former world champions, and we had a plethora of those pugilistic nights and back in the day that we don't get anymore. So for me, that would be those kind of cards, and I saw a lot of them. So it was everything is overhyped. Everything, I mean, if you ever, even for 5 minutes, turn on a damn UFC thing, when I see a highlight, every one of their fighters is the greatest fighter in the world. It's all a bunch of crap and overhyped. So anyway, it was a hell of a card in the sense that we got to see some damn good fights and a few great fighters, a few.
Well, the second complaint is that while the matchmaking for most of the card was really good, especially under the circumstances for a couple of them, the second fight of the show pitted a 2-0 local favorite from Saudi Arabia, Mohammed Alakel, against a fighter named Angel Gomez. Gomez was on a 17-fight losing streak and had gone 0-42-3 in his last 45 fights. He hadn't won a fight since February 2021. That's 4 years. And yet he was featured on a high-profile pay-per-view show. Why would someone with such an awful record be allowed to compete on this show?
And you know what? You know the answer to that is I have no idea. I mean, you have to do with your work. You have to research and figure this stuff out more than I did. So you're the one that I would ask that question to. What the hell was he doing on the card, Lee?
Well, I have an idea. You have a local favorite. He's 2-0. He's a novice fighter. And in Great Britain, especially in Great Britain, they have these stables of loser fighters. They are veterans, they're defensively sound, they're there to go the distance to sort of mentor in a way these young prospects, help build their records. You see their records of 100 losses, 150 losses. um, they last the distance. They don't get knocked out, so they can fight the next week against another rising undefeated
Yeah.
prospect. That's what this guy's from Mexico, but really that's what he has become. He went into the English circuit and
Yeah.
he's been guiding these undefeated fighters, and now he's doing it for this
This might
undefeated.
surprise you. This might surprise you. Thank you for laying it out. Like I honestly don't have as much a problem as that, especially because you brought up these guys get so damn good at losing. They know how to lose good, and
Mhm.
at the same time help a young fighter that's not going to hurt them.
Yep.
Certainly not going to hurt their record. Their record is already crapola. So it just helps build up a fighter. Fortunately, unfortunately, that's always gone on in boxing. If we're honest about it, we just didn't see it on television. That's the point. So as we move on,
We move on to the third one, and as I said earlier, the Callum Smith Joshua Buatsi fight was just outstanding fight. But what wasn't outstanding was the 119-110 scorecard submitted by Steve Gray. Most people saw this fight as a highly competitive back and forth slugfest, and it was. I think the other scores of 116, 112, and 115, 113, especially the 15-13 score, was more reflective of what happened in the ring. It seems that these days we see these big time fights, and there's almost always one card that is completely off the reservation. Why do you think that is?
incompetent judges. I'm hoping that's what I hope it is, because the other thing would be something sinister, and we don't want to, and we want to, hope that it's not that. I just think again, it's good that we had Steve Weisfeld on
Mhm.
to explain a lot of this. And look at my scorecard; it was kind of wide. Many people, because people get screwed up with, when a card is like mine, 117-12, and yours is closer, they think, oh, it was a close fight, so Lee's card's got to be correct. No, because it's just the way you see the fight. But there's always these ridiculous outliers, and I don't understand it. The only thing I can attribute it to, Lee, is incompetence.
And a note about Steve Gray. I've seen him work many fights as a referee, and he's a very good referee. He's a no-nonsense referee. He applies the rules and he does a good job. Maybe it's just one bad night and one
That can
bad
happen.
fight on the card.
That could happen.
And finally, Turkey Al Sheikh came under fire after a video surfaced of him walking to Hamza Shiraz's corner and told him in his corner during the later stages of the fight that their man was 2 rounds behind. And the reason why this caused a big stir is because there was no open scoring on this card. And Turkey Al Sheikh is the man, the central point of power and influence on this card. The question is, was he just giving his opinion that he wanted Shiraz to win? He had a vested interest in Shiraz winning the fight. Was he just giving his opinion and trying to spur him on, or was there something else at work? We're not sure. But what we can agree on is that it was a very bad look. This is the man at the very center of attention, and here he is trying to influence the result of a fight in which he has a vested interest. What do
Well,
you
to
think?
play devil's advocate with it, he easily could have. Somebody could have been in his ear, one of the writers, another person that he knows, and says, I got him down a couple of points. Turk, I got him down," or he might have had his own thoughts in his head. So I guess unless we saw him over talking to the judges, there's no way to pin that or put that on him. I just don't think we know. Bad look, but boxing. How many times have we seen promoters get up from their seats and go say things. I think Don King might have done that a few times. So on that one, I think we're going to have to give the Turk a pass, and just maybe he'll learn from the criticism of that.
Yeah, rookie mistake. He's relatively new to the game. He's new onto the scene. He We'll see what happens in the future, and hopefully he's learned from that.
Okay, and we're 2 minutes behind on the scorecard, so we'll go to a break, come back with more right after this.
I got two options. Option one, I can accept defeat. Option two, I can get up. I can get tougher. I can get faster. I can get stronger. And then I go get mine. I made my choice. Have you made yours?
In this corner of the podcast, a buck 52, boxing's biggest names, boxing's biggest stories, boxing's biggest fights, and we've been covering a lot of them, and we will continue to with some reviews and previews. Lee?
Well, this past Monday, Junto Nakatani recorded the third successful defense of his WBC bantamweight title with a third-round knockout over David Cuellar, who, at 5 feet 8.5 inches, was not only the tallest opponent of Nakatani's pro career, he was a half-inch taller than Nakatani himself. Cuellar's awkward, messy pressure allowed him to get a few shots in. There was some discoloration on Nakatani's face after the fight. Minor, but Nakatani's command of distance, his technical supremacy, his superior power, he got 2 knockdowns in the third round and the 10-count victory after the second knockdown. Nakatani is expected to take part in a unification fight with IBF counterpart Ryosuke Nishida next, but the hope is that Nakatani will eventually meet undisputed 122-pound champion Naoya Inoue, perhaps in Saudi Arabia. That is a fight that I am definitely looking forward to. And to me, that's a 50-50 fight, and I am leaning toward Nakatani.
Nakatani and Inoue will be Naka-great, man. That'll be a great battle, I think, and I hope we do get a chance to see it sooner than later. And I know we're going to move on to another guy who knows how to put people to sleep.
Gervonta Davis, yeah, he fights tonight, and he's defending his WBA lightweight title against reigning WBA 130-pound champion Lamont Roach, whose title will not be at stake. This is the first head-to-head title fight between two great boxing cities, Baltimore and Washington, D.C., and yet it's not being staged in either city. It was originally scheduled for last December in Houston, Texas, of all places, but for whatever reason, it didn't take place. Now it's happening inside the Barclays Center in Brooklyn. How do you size up this fight, and how quickly is Tank going to take him out?
I guess it all depends on the mindset of both fighters. I mean, is any title on the line?
Gervonta's WBA lightweight title.
Okay. We've seen this story enough. Unless this guy is extremely active or extremely patient and knows how to deal with trying to not get caught up in all the traps. Gervonta reminds me of how I was trying to get these rats that I had to get rid of, that you have to set traps and you got to be patient. You can't be too patient, but you got to be patient. You got to be smart. And then eventually it works, and it usually works out for Gervonta, and I would assume this will be no different. It wouldn't surprise me if sooner or later somebody goes the distance with him. But I certainly think that it will probably be another rat trap, and Roach is going to be the rat that gets caught in the Davis trap.
Yeah, I agree with you. And there's going to be a 3-fight undercard. And the first, highly rated Cuban Yoenis Tellez will face former unified champion Julian Williams for the WBA secondary belt at 154, while Alberto Puello will defend his WBC super lightweight championship against mandatory challenger Sandor Martin, who is best known for beating Mikey Garcia and giving Teofimo Lopez one of his toughest fights. Finally, the co-main event will see Jose Valenzuela defend his defend his 140-pound title against Washington D.C.'s Gary Antoine Russell. Now, as far as who I think will win, 3 of Williams's 4 losses have come by knockout, and I think that the Cuban powerhouse is going to add to that total, especially since this fight is going to be scheduled for 12 rounds. He's going to have a lot of time to pick the lock, you might say. As for the other 2 fights, Puello and Russell fought each other last June for a secondary title, and Puello won by split decision. The hope is that they will win their respective fights here to set up a potential title unification rematch. Both of them are in tough. Valenzuela is coming off the upset win over Pitbull Cruz last August, and he's got a lot of momentum. It's one thing to outbox a 5'4" fire plug with short arms like the Pitbull. It's another to try and do the same thing against a guy who's just as tall and rangy as you are and has an even bigger punch. I think Valenzuela will eventually be drawn into a firefight, and once that happens, I think he's going to get stopped. And as for Puello Martin, I think it's an even fight on paper, and it'll likely be a tense, tight chess match. However, Martin is coming off a 15-month layoff. That's the longest of his 13-year pro career, and that really concerns me. And because of that, I like Puello to win on points.
All right, giving us the winners with Lee Groves. Let me tell you how you can win in terms of any and all work you get done on your teeth, your smile. And especially if your dentist is too damn expensive. I highly recommend you get in touch with Dr. Nam
Fun.
the dental implant expert. He's in Vegas, he's in Jersey, he's in New York. He is ubiquitous, if you will, all over the place. Does a great job. He is truly the expert in full mouth cosmetic veneers, crowns, dental implants, extractions, and sedation. He's consistently helped his patients achieve their ideal smiles by offering a range of affordable financial options tailored to their needs. And and that is something, because sometimes people have to settle, and that's the word, settle, for less because of the price. And you don't want to do that when it comes to your teeth, your smile, your gums, your mouth, your ability to eat. So, Dr. Namfan, I want to give you the best number, though, because, again, he's in Vegas, but he's also in New York and Jersey. Call this number, 702-637-9168, 702-637-9168, Dr. Namfan. And we'll come back and talk about a guy that you talk about, an overachiever.
Yeah.
A guy who made the most and even more of his ability inside the squared circle. You're talking about Greg Haugen, who passed away a few days ago. We'll be back.
I got 2 options. Option 1, I can accept defeat. Option 2, I can get up. I can get tougher. I can get faster. I can get stronger. And then I go get mine. I made my choice. Have you made yours?
Back, final segment in this corner, the podcast 152. And we want to honor a fallen warrior, a guy who, we all remember his fights with Vinny Pazienza and Camacho and Chavez, and there were others. And I believe he won a couple of world titles along the way. Greg Haugen passed away the other day. I think it was after a long battle with, I believe, colon cancer, if I'm correct. And I know you've put together a little tribute, so I'll pass it to you.
Yeah, as you said, former two division champion Greg Haugen died of colon cancer. He was 64 years old, and during his 17-year career, the native of Auburn, Washington, produced a record of 39 wins, 10 defeats, one draw, with 19 knockouts. And his best wins were against Jimmy Paul to win the IBF lightweight title. That was considered an upset. He beat Vinny Pazienza to regain the belt after having lost it to him 8 months earlier. And Hector Camacho to not only win the WBO title at 140, but also to become the first man to officially defeat the Macho Man as a pro. He was 38-0 going into that fight. Although he was best known for his toughness, and that reputation for toughness was well deserved, he possessed underrated technical skills and he had sneaky power. In fact, the first fight of both my VHS collection and my DVD video collection was his first round knockout of Charlie White Lightning Brown in January 1986. I had the pleasure of interviewing him for a story that I wrote in the early 1990s for KO Magazine. And in the article, I interviewed 5 men who had been in the ring with Julio Cesar Chavez, who at the time was driving toward a potential record of 100-0. And because Haugen had fought him before the largest paid crowd in boxing history, over 130,000, I just had to talk to him. And he didn't disappoint. Before the fight, Greg famously made fun of Chavez's 84-0 record by saying that most of his opponents were Tijuana taxi drivers. But promoter Don King stoked the Mexican fans' anger by attributing racist comments to Haugen that Haugen had never said. And by the time fight night came around, the crowd's anger was at a fever pitch. And this is what he told me about his walk to the ring. And this is from the article. Quote, "The walk to the ring was about 200 yards, 200 of the worst yards I have ever seen. You couldn't get through. People were packed like tuna in a can. We had bodyguards trying to protect us from the crowd, but there weren't anywhere near enough of them to prevent the crowd from getting to us if they really wanted to. I probably had some beer and cups of piss thrown on me. They were holding onto our flags and spitting on them. It was cruel. Can you imagine what it would have been like if I would have knocked Chavez out? It was a very scary feeling being in a spot like that. It was like a mouse caught by a cat. You either run or you die." End quote. Haugen was floored seconds into the fight, and he was stopped in round 5. And despite the stress and pain and disappointment he must have felt at that moment, he kept his sense of humor. During the post-fight interview, he told Chavez that his opponents, quote, "must have been very tough taxi drivers." Yeah. I can tell you this. If anyone was qualified to judge a person's toughness, it was Greg Haugen. If you made the grade with him, that was more than good enough. Rest in peace.
You know, I met him on a few occasions, and he started like in that tough man competition. I used to work with Art Dorr when Art Dorr, had the tough man competitions. In fact, one time I was teamed with Mr. T. That was who beat me out in the jewelry department somehow. But
you tell.
I call fighters the most common and uncommon of all athletes, and I think Greg exemplified that. And I also sometimes I'm criticized for saying a guy, like is a club fighter in terms of his abilities and what have you. But sometimes club fighters can become world champions and even more. And I think that's special when a guy that has and he is better than a club fighter, you're right, because he could do subtle stuff. But at the end of the day, little guy, short arms, not a lot of power, not a lot of speed, not great defense, but enough over the years, technical guile and toughness, he did what he did to win 2 different world titles along the way and to beat some excellent fighters, especially a guy like Camacho, a Hall of Famer. So, I think I'm glad we were able to take a little time. And I should be honest with the fans, we were talking about getting him on the show about a year ago. Maybe when we talk about getting people on the show, we need to pull the trigger right away, because I don't want to get too, sad here. But there have been a few other guys, a guy, for example, named Eugene Mercury Morris that I spoke to and hesitated to have him on because of the timing of when we wanted him on. And by the time we did that, it was too late. And we talked about Haugen several times, and we were waiting, and we were even going to tie it in with Vinny Pazienza, who we've been working to get on, who will be in the Hall of Fame, being inducted. So I'm glad we can do it now. Yeah, Greg Haugen, you brought a lot of fun and excitement in your fights. They were and the pre and the post fights were pretty damn good as well. Rest in peace, Greg Haugen. And on that note, we'll get out of here, and we'll talk to you next week. So long, everybody.